What if I told you that God was trying to tell you something right now and you're missing it? Not in a church sermon way, not in some voice of God in your ear, but in the small stuff, the hints and nods, the direction you're meant to go in. You see, I think this spirit is like a radio hum. It's faint, quiet, overshadowed by the chaos of our lives. But it's there. And if we want to hear what God has to say, it becomes a matter of quieting our thoughts in our mind. I really believe that every person matters, every life is worth living, and every journey has a purpose. In your darkest moments, when you feel lost, directionless, or hopeless, it's important to remember that you're never truly alone. You're never truly abandoned. God speaks to us through our suffering, through our highs and lows, through any and every moment of chaos in our lives. Like a radio transmission, that signal is always available, but it's up to us as the receptors to tune in and really start listening. What it requires of us is faith and humility, and a willingness to set everything aside for a moment and pause, to quiet the heart and the mind towards an emptiness, a silent acceptance for the good and the bad, the tragedy of the circumstances of our lives. Whoever you are, however you see the world, I need you to know that this signal is there. This presence can be tapped into. In my lowest moments, when I felt like nobody could understand what I was going through or how I was feeling, I felt I was forced to look inward and begin asking some big questions. I carried doubt and fear and every manner of negativity within me. I felt alone and unequipped to deal with my challenges. For so long, I whittled away in self-pity and self-hatred, escaping from my anxieties and doubt and cheap addictions like food, gaming, and pornography. Often, it is only when you reach your lowest point that you are open to the greatest change. My rock bottom was a self-inflicted tragedy, and it was only once I had gone there that I began to search for something more, that I began to really create a connection with God. You see, I believe that the nature of the universe is not unnecessary cruelty or evil. I believe that humans are made to suffer and bleed and die not out of spite or malice, but out of necessity. The universe is an impartial playground, where the push and pull of fate can sometimes be hard to understand. I once thought that God had abandoned us, that the horror and tragedy of the world had proved it. What I now realize is we are immortal souls. We aren't bound to existing for just this life. There's more to existence than this rock, the people you know, and the person you are. The reason we are made to suffer and struggle along is so we may grow and evolve through that hardship. Like a sword to a grindstone, our challenges help to clear away any weakness in us and refine our edge into something sharp and valuable. Sometimes God has a plan for us we can't understand. Sometimes we are made to suffer and it feels unfair to us in the moment. But nevertheless, something I've realized is in a way it is only when you are struggling that you can truly connect to God. Although He is always there for us, to reach out requires a level of humility and piety that can sometimes be hard to achieve otherwise. When we are at a low point, we are vulnerable. Our perception of the world and ourselves is less concrete. It is within these moments that we may be influenced by malicious forces, or we may choose to confide in the Spirit. This relationship with God is often strengthened by our hardships, by accepting the neutral reality of existence and confiding in higher energies for guidance. You see, everyone has their own allotment of suffering and unavoidable grief, but that does not mean we are mere victims of fate, because I believe that imbued by our Creator within all of us is also this capacity to exercise free will, to alter the circumstances of our life in moving forward towards something better. It is in these moments of hardship where we find peace and acceptance within, at our lowest point, and choosing regardless to move forward and exercise our free will to create something better, that we may truly hear what guidance God has for our journey. This guidance rarely comes as obviously as a loud booming voice in our minds, but is really more like a perception to notice the small synchronicities and signs all around us, the messages which are always there, but we are not typically equipped to hearing. What I mean is God often tells us things in subtle ways. Maybe He speaks to us through the people in our lives, or the show that we're watching, or the way the birds play in the bird bath. He speaks to us through the voices we can hear, and hides His intent behind metaphors and parables all in plain sight. These at times are what you might call confirmations, where your thoughts are drawn in a certain direction and you begin to form some kind of conclusion, and all at once it seems like a sign from God appears as if to confirm you're on the right track. Now, all of this might feel a bit out there and abstract, so I'll put it another way to try and help you understand. So, when I was younger, I rapidly began to develop a pretty severe autoimmune condition. I was only 15, but I had to leave school. I self-isolated, and I felt the most lost and confused and alone I had ever been in my life. I went from living a healthy, comfortable existence to having constant difficulty breathing and heartburn that no amount of medication would fix. At this time, I was not a very spiritual person, and my connection with God was weak. I remember one night in particular where I was feeling so awful and abandoned that I went up to my bathroom mirror in the middle of the night when no one was home, and I just began to shout at myself. I'm not even sure why, but I called myself weak and pathetic, and I put myself down. I was angry and hopeless and thought that God was cursing me, or He didn't exist at all. I felt self-pity and self-hatred all at once. I said that I was a good person, and I didn't deserve to suffer, and I said that the fact I was proof that God wasn't real, or He was malevolent. I said that I hated God, and I wished I was never born in the first place. I sat in that bathroom for quite a while just lashing out at the world, a young boy unable to accept the cards he was dealt with in life. By this point it was early in the morning and I hadn't slept at all. I poured myself a cup of tea, went outside, and watched the sunrise on my back patio. Suddenly, for some reason, that flood of hatred and negativity I was feeling had gone away. My mind was empty and my thoughts were clear. I literally sighed, like a quiet acceptance for the way things were, like I didn't care to lash out anymore because I knew that it wouldn't do me any good. At that moment, watching the sunrise, sipping my tea, I felt like somehow God began speaking to me wordlessly, and it all became clear in a moment. Not to say that I was miraculously healed or understood exactly why I was suffering, but I felt I could see for a moment the design that fate had for my life, the freedom I had in forging that path, and the beauty and suffering which has inspired all of my greatest accomplishments. For any of you who are going through a rough patch, who feel lost and confused and afraid, I want you to know that it's okay to struggle with faith. It's okay to get lost on the path. Some amount of doubt and confusion is perfectly normal. You don't have to believe entirely to try and open yourself up to God. All that it requires is silencing the mind, tuning out all the distractions, and sitting with complete presentness and humility for a moment. Widening your perception to see the subtle things you never quite noticed before. The millions of little signs and signals God leaves for us to try and understand the universe. I have no idea what God is trying to tell you, but I know that the Spirit speaks to all of us, in our own way, with our own lives and perspective. You don't have to believe this is the case, but if you're open-minded enough and humble enough to try, I truly believe you can gain some outside input on your life and begin seeing things in a way much more constructive. Now up until this point, this video has been scripted, but I figured I would put a section at the end here where I'm kind of speaking a little bit more candidly without a script in front of me, more like my traditional commentaries. I guess what I have to say, just to kind of like cap off this entire video, is honestly, like, I think people who haven't experienced a large amount of suffering in their life might not even feel the need to look inward and try to speak to God, speak to the universe, whatever you want to call it. For me, it was like, I always, had this kind of framework of believing in something higher, some kind of higher power, but I thought it was like unreachable. I thought that, we are kind of separate from God, from the universe, from source consciousness, and that we were kind of alone here. In some ways, it seems like, although you probably can find this inner spirit at any time, most people only are able to reach that or only get there when they go through suffering. Something about that kind of forces you to look inward and begin asking the big questions in a way you just don't if everything is going perfectly fine. If you're at a point in your life right now where you're kind of in a deep pit and you're suffering and you're confused, I'd like to just try to have you think of it as an opportunity, because no one sees suffering as an opportunity for growth. But I think that anyone who has been through something traumatic and has recovered from it and has grown from it will attest to the fact that oftentimes we as humans grow the most when we go through those sorts of experiences. Oftentimes, lessons that are incredibly valuable to us can only be learned through hardship. Certain things you can only really understand or come to that conclusion because of a negative experience. It's like, although I wish we lived in a world where it was all sunshine and rainbows and there was never anything bad about the world, The truth is that this existence has a lot of suffering and hardship and struggle within it, and it's kind of all baked in, but it doesn't have to be bad. It's all about taking those experiences and letting it shape your perspective in a way that's positive, or will help you to enjoy the positive experiences more so. It's almost like because of my suffering, because of these experiences, I've grown closer to God, and I'm able to appreciate the beauty of the world more. I'm able to enjoy my life and the positives more than I was able to before. So then, even despite the suffering that I felt and continue to feel, I think I get more out of this existence because of what I learned from that suffering. So I want you to know that your suffering, your trials, in a way, are a gift. There's this famous kind of like meme online where it's like, God gives his toughest battles to his strongest soldiers. And in a way, it's true, because some things, like, like you want to believe that like God can take your challenges away from you. Like, I used to just wish and pray and hope that one day I would just wake up and my health issues would be gone and that God has spared me from it. But that's kind of not true. For the most part in life, the challenges you're given, the suffering you're forced to undertake, isn't just going to go away. Like, you just have to deal with the circumstances that you're dealt with, in a way. And so I guess what I would say is, like, the people that have those challenges, that have to struggle through them, in a way, they become God's strongest soldiers out of necessity. Because when faced with a challenge that big and overwhelming, you kind of have no choice but just look inward and grow from that, and become a big enough person that you can outgrow your challenges and not let them tear you down and destroy you entirely. I guess, like, in a way, the idea is you want to be able to grow enough from your challenges that you can escape suffering entirely, because suffering is in the mind, Like, there is an external nature of reality where we're confronted with problems in the outside world, but that doesn't mean that they're inherently good or bad. The Stoics would tell us we get to choose how we react to those circumstances. That something happens and it's neither good or bad inherently. It is our judgment which makes it so. The stronger a person you become, the less your problems have to be one way or another. The less you have to pass judgment and say, like, this is hard, this is terrible, I can't deal with this. If you have that sureness because you've been through suffering and overcome it, then challenges of life seem less overwhelming going forward. And the truth is, because everyone is going to face some amount of challenges at some point in their lives, it's like the more you become equipped to deal with those, the less you're going to suffer in the entirety of life. People who never suffer, people who never experience hardships, are often the weakest. And so when life eventually does catch up to them, like it does for everyone, and they do suffer, they're less equipped to deal with it. There was this really famous psychological experiment done in Vienna before World War II, where they found that among the world's populations of teenagers, like youth, the suicide rates were the highest in Vienna, or in these communities where there were very kind of like rich, entitled children, where they'd grown up with life being quite easy, but then the economy took a downturn, their social welfare went down, like their lives just decreased significantly from this high that was enabled to them to this low, because those kids weren't really equipped to deal with the challenges of life. They'd never really confronted that before. And so maybe they're 16, 17, they're already pretty developed, and then life gets really bad, and it's almost like it's harder for them to bounce back from that than people who are kind of more used to that suffering, are more conditioned to it because they've experienced it in their own lives. So I don't know. I guess I just wanted to add a little bit of commentary onto what I had to say. So that's that. But thank you guys for watching to the end. I'm kind of getting back into the COD commentary space. Some of you, this may be the first video you found of mine, which is great. I urge you to stick around. But yeah, I figured I would steer more into this sort of content because honestly, my mission with YouTube is just to help people. Like, I really want to make some kind of positive impact in the world. And so I think these more esoteric spiritual concepts has the potential to help people the most. And also because I feel like this niche has kind of, I don't know, it's fallen into this category of things related to like business or dating advice or things like that. And I don't think really anyone's doing this or kind of expanding the genre in this specific way. And so for another reason, I also thought people might resonate with this style of conversation, like talking about these subjects. So I guess we'll just see. Kind of an experiment, but I think I'm going to keep doing this no matter how it does, because obviously I just want to help as much as I can. And I appreciate you guys for helping me help you. All right, have a good one. I don't know if that made sense.